Hello everyone and welcome to the recap for my second round of the over the board chess tournament that I played this last weekend. If you missed the first round, you can check it out over here or here. I'll put a card. And if you saw the first round and you thought that that was a wild or crazy game, you have not seen anything yet. The second game was a roller coaster ride, and I won't give any spoilers about the final result, but let's just say a wild game all around, and against an opponent who I've played against quite a few times before, not usually with that much success. I will, as always, if you're interested in just the chess, you can go to this timestamp over here and jump ahead, but else I will set the scene for the second round. Okay, so the scene setting. The first round game, if you saw it, it was quite short in terms of moves and then also in terms of the amount of time that it took. So all the other games were still going on. So between the rounds, I got to sit in the sun a little bit, which was nice. I got to have some snacks, drink a bit, and just chill a bit. I really, really wanted to take a nap, but I wasn't quite at the stage where I could just take a nap on the bench with people. Yeah, I thought that was a little bit weird. But yeah, overall, I had a nice rest in between rounds. Was really tired though. Heading into the second round, I saw I was paired against someone who was the second seed, I think, in the tournament, if not the first seed. And he's someone I've played against before at a lot of tournaments in the past. He's won a lot of the sections that I've played in. Really strong player. And so I was like, why do I have to get paired against him in round two? I'm still warming up. I'm not entirely sure how this is gonna go. I haven't my openings are in shambles at the moment, so I was just not the most excited going into this game. But I was like, you know what? I won my first game, and we are happy with that game, so it's fine. Whatever happens in this, I'm just gonna play my best, and we're looking at it from a learning experience. So if I lose my game, if I make mistakes, I learn from it, and that's why I'm training myself to calculate a bit more and to get back into the whole over the board spirit. Well, I've just spent 5 minutes talking to the screen and realized that I wasn't showing the chessboard, so let's jump into the chess now and actually show you what I'm talking about. So I had the black pieces in this game, and my opponent started with e4. I decided in this tournament to go for the Caro-Kann just because my theory is in shambles at the moment with all openings that I play, but I have the most experience busy playing Caro-Kann. If anyone goes back and checks my game and games in the past, I probably played Caro-Kann. So I thought, let me just do this. It's a little bit lower risk, and the aim of this tournament is not to try out my opening theory and test my openings, but rather just to get used to calculating, thinking for a long period of time, and just getting back into the overboard chess. So I thought, c6, let's just go for Caro. And so I was overjoyed when my opponent played d3 because I was like, this isn't mainline theory, this is both of us just playing chess. So d5, just continue with the general plans. They played knight to d2, which is kind of similar. There's a main line where the pawn's on d4, and then you usually take on e4, they take with the knight, and things happen from there. But it's a little bit different with the pawn back on d3, because now if I capture, they can potentially capture back with the pawn if they want to, or with the knight, and they have quite a nice knight, but things are different with the pawn not being on d4. So I decided not to capture, and rather to go for pawn to e5, just with the idea it's taking control of the center. Now they can't play d4. If knight goes out, I can just defend with bishop to d6, something like that. And yeah, standard theory, just take control of the center. So they did go knight to f3, bishop to d6 to defend the pawn and also develop my bishop, prepare to castle. They went g3, and I was like, wow, all of my opponents fear and shadowing their bishops against me. But yeah, okay, g3, I went knight to f6, just standard developing the pieces. I don't know if any of this is theory. I don't know if I should have been doing something different, but I thought, let me just get my king to safety, get my pieces out, and then we'll see where the game goes. My opponent then played bishop to g2, so I castled. See, very one-track mind, not doing anything too crazy, and I think we were playing all of this quite quickly as well. Not too much thought going into these moves. Then my opponent castled, I developed my bishop to e6. I wasn't sure here if I should develop my bishop to g4 or just hang back on e6. I don't really like d7 because my knight might want to go there in future. But I was thinking potentially here what I could try to do, if I put my bishop here and it's attacking this direction, I can go d4, my pawns are now pointing in this direction, so I'm playing on this side of the board, and then start going maybe c5, b5, things like that, and see if anything happens. Also potentially using the same plan as in the previous game, just trying to block my opponent's bishop in and make sure they aren't able to take over here and open things up for the bishop. So they went c3, obviously, to stop me from going d4. And here I went knight b to d7. It's a fairly standard place for the knight in these openings, I think. You defending the e5 pawn if it needs defense in future. You're connecting the rooks. Your queen maybe goes to c7, b6. You're also, I don't know if you ever would hop here, but with the d3 pawn that's not currently defended, I was like, maybe that's something in future. And this square would also be putting some pressure on e4. So that's basically why I decided knight to d7, still not thinking a lot over here, and then queen to c7. Here I really wasn't sure what to do, so I was just, let me go connect my rooks and then probably start with some sort of play on the queen side. But it's a position that I need to study this a little bit more and figure out what my plans are supposed to be in these types of positions, because it's not an area that I'm currently comfortable with. So they went queen to c2, so I went rook to b8, once again going for this kind of idea. Not really sure where I was going with that, but I was like, a bad plan is better than no plan at all. So I went b5 after my opponent went back to f1. I was anticipating that they might be going over here. And then I was like, they aren't really heading anywhere scary there. This seems to be well defended. So I was like, it's fine. Knight to f1. Nothing too crazy. And then after knight to g5, I thought for a little bit, I was like, first of all, if I go back here, they can probably just push their pawn, and I've maybe created a weakness, but I have to go back in any case. I was a little bit worried about f4 at this stage, because I thought there might be some tactics if I took that they might be able to push in future if I moved some of my pieces away. So I decided, let me ask the knight some questions. If I go h6, the knight either has to go back, and then you're not going to be able to play f4 or anything like that. And if you take my bishop, I thought that this would be quite good for me because, and this is what actually happened in the game, so I played h6, knight took over here. I thought after I take back, first of all, I have another pawn in the center, which is defending this. So now they can never take this. So their bishop is going to be super inactive. And I was like, I also have, not to that square, but I also have an open file for my rook. Maybe I can attack f2 in future. It's a little bit tricky if they do play f3 or f4, because I might be able to get a check along this diagonal. So I wasn't feeling too upset with this over here. And then after the move bishop to h3, I was like, wait, I'm not sure I like this quite as much. I just didn't even cross my mind that e6 might be a weakness and that it could be attacked, because the bishop on g2 like stays on g2. A fianchetted bishop is supposed to protect the king. Of course it doesn't have to. And my opponent went bishop h3, and I was like, wait, well, how do I defend this? So I decided to just go rook. No, wait. I moved this rook over here. So this one, I decided to abandon my plan on this side of the board. I don't really have that many options. I can go here, but then I was like, I'm moving across from the open f file. And I can go here, but then probably even b4. b4, I have to move the knight, and I'm dropping the e6 pawn with check as well. So we were not happy about that. So rook across to defend. And I was like, well, now I don't know what I'm doing, because I can't really attack on this side. I don't really want to attack on this side too much either, because maybe my c pawn becomes weak. But I thought we make the best of whatever situation that we find ourselves in. So they went bishop to e3, busy potentially attacking the pawn, potentially supporting a push over here. So I found the move knight to b6, which first of all blocks the bishop out. If they take over here, I think I was going to take back with the pawn, because now I have an open a file. I have another pawn towards the center. I have 6 pawns on 4 files, and it's supporting pushes. Things could happen over here, so I'm quite happy with this. But my other idea with knight to b6 was, I was thinking that if you push the pawn over here, I think I can take back, and in some of the lines I can get my knight to c4. Maybe I'm also attacking the b2 square. Maybe I want to go back here if I want to put pressure on these pawns. So I thought knight to b6, it's also just getting the knight out of the way a little bit, trying to untangle things, because I don't have that much else to do in this position. So knight to b6, they went back to d2 over here, still not doing any pushes with their f pawn, and not really doing anything in the center, which was annoying me a little bit, because I was like, if something happens, well, I suppose it's a bad way to look at it, but I was like, if they do something in the center, this is great for me, because if they take, okay, that's my move. If they take, like, I can take back over here. Now this isn't a weak pawn. Now this looks great. Now I can start pushing pawns. That's amazing. I was like, if they push, that looks great for me as well, because what was my plan? I think I was gonna go like here, and then if you take here, I can maybe go here as maybe winning a pawn. I can get c5 pushes. Was I even going? I think I was going to take, and if they take with the bishop, we get this. So I mean, this is great for me. I was quite happy with all of these situations, but obviously, if I was thinking that it was a good thing, my opponent was probably thinking it was a bad thing for them, so that's why they didn't do it. But it was frustrating me quite a bit that there was just nothing happening in the center of the board, and I didn't see a way that I could force anything to happen either, because I was thinking, like, even if I managed to get a pawn push in, I think my pawns are a little bit too weak, or like if I could take over here, then these pawns look really, really dumb, because they're doubled, they're isolated, and this one's being attacked by a bishop. So yeah, not much that I can do. But after knight to d2, I thought of the meme. I was like, well, might as well get connect 4. Once again, it counts as a win in our books. Even if we don't win the game overall, we connected our 4 pawns. So it counts. We're happy with this. But also I thought this was a decent move because it is stopping d4 from happening. I now can't go knight to c4 anymore because of the knight busy defending this. And I was like, maybe I get to push here in future, because then if they take and I take back, then I get to push on e5. And then I have a beautiful pawn center. I've undoubled my pawns. I've got rid of the pawn which is being attacked by the bishop. Everything looks beautiful. So I thought c5 might be good. I was like, maybe we get to push over here. There might be things happening. So my opponent went f3. I was like, okay, well, we're not getting any extra attackers over here. The immediate push doesn't work. So if we go here, they don't have to take. I think they can just go back. But even if they do take, I can take over here. Actually, no, I don't think they were going to take, because if we go back, this is, once again, as I said, it's looking decent for me, although the engine is telling me that this is not okay because they get an open diagonal to my king. But I would have been happy in this situation, I think. This was my general plan, so I didn't think that they would be able to take. I thought they'd just be able to move back. And then I was thinking, if I push over here, unfortunately they now have 2 attackers. I only have 1 defender. And even over here, it's not looking too great. So I don't really have anything that I can do in terms of pushing my pawns. So I decided to just go across the other side of the board. So I went queen to f7. I was thinking maybe at some stage in future I can get in on this side of the board. Attacking the bishop, I'm also attacking this pawn over here. This pawn might be weak if they do move their knight away again. The maneuvering of the knight seems to be happening quite a bit. So I thought, let's go queen across. And then as another thing is I'm defending this e6 pawn, maybe a little bit dangerously in terms of if takes now it's a pin. So I just need to make sure that they can't get another attacker or another couple of attackers onto this e6 square. But I thought, let me defend, I can maybe go across. And now my rook is free to go and do some other things with its life if it would like to. So they hopped across to b3 with their knight, busy now attacking this pawn. And I thought a while, I was like, should I just push over here? But once again, I thought it was too early for a push, just based on the fact they didn't have to take, they could move back. If they did take, it still wasn't great for me. My c5 pawn was going to be weak if I opened up this file. Just wasn't happy with that overall. So I defended the pawn and I went with my knight, which is the f knight, because now I'm attacking this pawn. It's not a very subtle threat, but it's a threat at least. My knight's also defending these 2 squares, and potentially I was thinking if I push and they take, I might be able to hop a knight to e5. e5, then I'm busy attacking this, so maybe a c4 push in future is possible, where I can then hop to this square or threaten to win a pawn and force them to take. And yeah, basically just trying to see whatever little hope that I had in this position. I was trying to make those plans happen desperately, even though none of them were really concrete. But they, of course, went across and defended the pawn. I might have been expecting just the bishop to go back, or even potentially a push here isn't possible, because push and I have 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they only have 2 defenders, and even moving the rook across won't help. So I wasn't expecting them to push over there, but I don't know if I did expect f3. I think I was actually thinking of queen across to e2, just to defend over here, moving the queen off of the c-file, maybe to get the rook along the c-file, something like that. But after rook to f1, now I decided that it was the correct time to go d4, because now the bishop can't go back here, because then I should be able to potentially take over here. I do need to be careful about bishop takes d4 afterwards with an attack on my queen, but I didn't know about bishop to f2, and of course my opponent then went back, so probably scared of the same things, deciding to go back here to defend this as well, and just keep things simple, nothing too crazy happening. Now what I did was c4. So I decided I could also potentially, once I've chased the knight away, I can maybe hop my knight to c5 to put some pressure on this pawn. Basically my entire goal here was to try and create a passed pawn, try and get like a d3 push in that was supported by previous or like backing pawns, and else to maybe try and like open up a file or 2 and do something. I was getting really frustrated in this game because there wasn't really a lot happening, and all of my plans or attempted plans were being foiled. My opponent didn't take over here. So I thought that they might have taken, no, if they take it's bad, because if they take here and then like after the knight moves, I was thinking I could go something like this. So I was expecting them not to take. I was expecting a knight to a5, which is a little bit tricky for me now, because now this is being attacked twice. I don't have time to go something like knight to c5 and attack this pawn. So I was very much expecting knight to a5, and I wasn't entirely sure how I was going to follow up over here. I think I was thinking of maybe going like rook to c8 to try and defend this again, and then looking at going knight to c5, but it still doesn't work because there's crazy stuff. So I was just like, I'm going to make this move. I'm expecting knight to a5. We'll see what happens. And fortunately, my opponent went back to c1. So this made me quite happy, because now that the knight went back, I can potentially do this in future. I decided that now was not the correct time though. So I decided instead to go to g6. I'm trying to remember now why I thought of going to g6. And I'm drawing a blank. I think what I wanted to do was, before moving a rook across, I wanted to make sure there wasn't any pins. I'm still defending things here. I'm attacking the f3 pawn. I think I was looking at potentially going like rook to f6 and a rook across over here. Maybe I was also, or I think I was also looking at over here that if they took over here and took over here, maybe there was a bishop sack. Maybe I'd be able to push this pawn, some sort of attack on the king. It turns out queen to h5 was probably a little bit more direct, because then I'm directly attacking the bishop and the pawn, and if they go back, then we can swing across to the side of the board and add some pressure. But I decided to go queen g6, and my opponent responded with knight to e2. So a lot of knight maneuvering happening over here, and I abandoned my previous plan. I know I've spoken a lot about knight to c5, but I thought, let's try be tricky here, because we're all human. We can all make mistakes. So let me go here, because there's always the temptation to take over here. And if that happens, I get to have a beautiful discovered check with d3 winning the queen. And you might think it sounds ridiculous that like a 1900 would blunder their queen, but trust me, it happens every now and again, even over the board chess. So bishop to c5, they took on d4. So I was like, okay, maybe it's going to happen. It might happen. I took back with the pawn, thinking I can push here in future as long as this knight is still defended. Then I have quite a solid pawn center. And once again, if they take, we're still threatening this over here. So they went knight to f4. And I'm now being attacked quite a bit, and I was like, oh no, I can't take here. I did consider going rook takes f4, but after bishop takes, I mean, I can do this. It doesn't really do anything. I've just given up the exchange for nothing. I don't really have an attack going. So I considered this briefly, and I was like, nah, that doesn't seem to be good. And then I realized this is being attacked twice. So the knight and the bishop, and I only have like major pieces busy defending it. But we fortunately know that a knight and a bishop are usually better than a rook and a pawn. So I was quite happy trading here, but I wasn't very happy that I'd missed the move knight to f4. And I opted to then go I went queen to f7. I considered going here, and I think I didn't want to be... Why did I not go here? I think I maybe didn't want to be attacked again if the knight had gone across. But yeah, all in all, I just decided f7 was a nicer square. I think also I wanted to defend the knight, and also possibly block off this diagonal from the queen in future. So I went queen to f7. My opponent played a3, which I also thought was a little bit strange. It's not a move that it came into my mind as like a candidate move. And I think what I was expecting here is I was expecting maybe like a b3 or a b4 potentially even. Something a little bit more aggressive, but a3 I presumed that probably the plan was going to go to b4. And then if I go across, trying to get the bishop out the way. I'm still, of course, hoping that they'll carelessly take over here and I'll get a discovered check. Because sometimes as well it happens in chess that you see a plan or an idea, you're like, oh, I need to watch out for that. And then 5 or 6 moves later, you forget that the position has changed. Or you forget, well, the position has changed and you forget that now you are in danger. And sometimes you do slip up to tactics that you initially saw because you just focused on other things that you're doing and forgot about the earlier threat. So over here, I jumped into e5 with my knight. I considered going over here, but I wasn't really happy blocking everything up. I thought I want to get my knight onto this e5 square to try put pressure on d3 and try make something happen over there. So knight to e5, and I also had a little bit of a crazy idea. A very, very crazy idea, which I considered doing first, but I dismissed it. I looked at g5. I was like, g5, I'm chasing the knight away, and then I'm attacking this. So I thought, let me, once again, switch up the move orders like I did in my first game. Instead of first going g5 and then after the knight moves, then do the like very obvious attack on this pawn, I thought, why not go here with the knight first? We're now attacking this twice, and then maybe my opponent forgets about things, does a careless move, maybe like moves their rook somewhere. Just say they go over here, and now I can go g5, and they have to move away from defending the pawn. And then I can probably take with the knight. Then once I move the knight, I have like discovered checks. things are looking great. Because another feature of this position, just to keep in mind, is that I can't currently capture with my pawn because my bishop is hanging. After I went knight to b5, once again, not a move I was expecting. b3. I definitely thought after a3 that the plan was going to be pawn to b4, but b3 was played instead. And I thought, let me just carry on with my plan, because that's not frustrating me too much. I have a lot of defenders on this pawn, and I'm happy kind of to open files. Also, I can't really do anything here. I can't take because I dropped my bishop. So I went g5, and my opponent took on c4. Here I thought, I was like, do I take the bishop, the knight? Because it was also, if I remember correctly, it was quite a quick move. So the b takes c4, I was like, surely you've seen that the knight is attacked. You're clearly comfortable giving the knight away for free. And that like worried me a little bit, because I was thinking, is there maybe some play on the king side? Are they planning on just opening the file over here, going across? Do they maybe have some tricks over here that I'm not seeing? Like, what is the plan of this? But I thought, let me test my luck once again. So I went b takes c4. I was like, I'm sure I'll have time to take the knight in future. I'm still attacking this pawn over here when they move back, so I should still be okay. I'll take over here, and there's always a chance that they take back and we still get this attack. As I was saying earlier, sometimes they do forget about why they're avoiding doing something. So I took back with the pawn. Sadly, my opponent didn't take over here, but instead they went for a4, which also confused me, because I was like, what is the trap here? Why can I not just take the free knight? And I was really stressing. We were also getting like quite low on time over here. I think we were both below 20 minutes at this point. The idea here is that after knight here, I have to move my knight away, and then this is being attacked. And I was just like, you know what? It's a free knight. I'm going to take the free knight. Did a little bit of calculation to check there was no like checkmate that was going to be happening on the board, but didn't do a ton of calculation because I didn't have a ton of time. So they took back almost immediately with the pawn. I was at some stage also thinking bishop takes so that this wasn't opened. Then I realized I was like, probably they're okay with the file being open. And I just took on d3. So I thought, I now have two great pawns. My knight over here is defending this. It's like, if this happens, I don't think I have to worry about moving away, because I have a couple of other moves that I'll show you in a moment. It's just like, I'm going to ignore this. I'm a piece up. Their king isn't super safe. I have some really nice pawns. And it was at this point that my opponent also offered a draw. And I was like, I want to carry on playing. We were both in a lot of time trouble, but I thought, I came here to play chess. And I feel like I have an advantage. I'm a piece up. What have I got to lose? Might as well carry on playing. My opponent did indeed play a5. So I saw over here that I could go across here, which has a dual purpose. First of all, it is busy attacking the bishop on h3. Second of all, remember I said earlier it's easy to forget about these things. d3 is now being threatened, so that check, the discovered check winning the queen. So if I go here, like bishop takes is such a natural looking move when you don't have that much time to make. You lose the queen. If you try save the bishop, you lose the queen. If you try save the queen, you lose the bishop with check as well. So I quite liked knight to f4. I almost, if I was like playing a blitz game, I like in my head I pre-moved queen takes f4, and then I was like, wait, I just have the discovered one. So I like unpre-moved in my mind. I don't know if that makes any sense. It makes no sense at all, but it was fast. It was fast chess, and I'm really used to playing online chess. So my opponent now went king to h1. And at this stage, my opponent has 2 minutes. I have 3.5 minutes, which sounds like, I mean, that's enough time for an entire blitz game. But it's really tricky, and we still have 10 seconds added per move. When you've been playing a classical game, the time just like disappears. Like you look at a continuation, and you look back at your clock, and you've used 2 or 3 minutes. But it feels as though it was a couple of seconds. Whereas when you're playing blitz online, you move, and then you don't think for that long because you know you don't have that much time. But we've now been playing chess for like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and you're used to like spending your time and you're just like making sure that everything's correct and you're calculating it safely. And so your time honestly does just disappear. You can get into a deep think quite easily. So we don't have a lot of time. You don't have to notate at this point because 10-second increment is being added. And if the increment I think is less than 30 seconds, you don't have to notate once your clock reaches 5 minutes or below. Both me and my opponent were still notating though at this stage. So I thought it was strange that he was notating, but I was like, maybe he's busy trying to like have the game for review or something afterwards. I was carrying on notating because I had a little bit of extra time compared to him, and I had like a general idea of my plans as well because I'd calculated a lot of this out. And yeah, so I was still notating because I was like, I always forget the game afterwards, and I wanted to be able to show as much of the game and review as much of the game as possible. So I was carrying on notating, but yeah, not a lot of time. We're in a little bit of a time scramble over here. So I decided to go d3 with the idea that I'm attacking the queen. I can maybe chase it away and save the knight in future. The main thing is I just wanted to chase the queen away from busy attacking this pawn. So my initial thought was if they go over here, I can go knight over here, and then these squares are both covered. Same thing for this, and then they have to move away from defending the pawn. Not a great thought, but it's like I didn't have that much time on my clock. But then after they went over here, I thought, wait, should I do this? Shouldn't I just take the free piece? Because also when I take the free bishop over here, well, they can take here, sure, but I'm still quite happy. And I think I was threatening, so what I saw, I was threatening, let me just show you this variation. So knight takes over here after takes. I was like, I'm threatening over here. If they take, and now queen takes f3, GG. How do you defend against this? Oh, if you try to defend like this, I can probably just exchange pieces. I have some like really far advanced pawns. I'm up an entire rook as well. And I could even just take time and take your b pawns. That there's absolutely no counterplay. So I thought that was quite a big threat. And another advantage of knight takes h3 is just that I'm defending the g1 square, so there's no funny business with rook g1 and maybe flipping things around and getting a bit of an attack. Because you can also get onto this diagonal and then like rook to g7, not the happiest. So trying to limit my ability to make a mistake, knight to h3, went over here, and my opponent, seeing all of this, decided to go bishop e3. I'm like, this is great. I get to trade some more pawns. Oh, not more pawns, more pieces. So I took the bishop, they took back over there. And then I decided, why not chase the queen around a little bit and see if we can get a queen trade. Obviously, by now, we're down to like a minute each on our clocks because it's quite a few moves that have been made. And the 10-second increment, especially with both of us notating, you don't gain a lot of time on your clock. So it's still just ticking downwards for the most part, especially if you have to think for a couple of seconds on a move. So queen over here, obviously my opponent didn't want to trade queens. So they went queen to d4. Here I thought, let me just attack the queen again. So I went here, just noticing as well that this diagonal was safe. It's covered by the knight, because I didn't want to get into a whole lot of like checking situations where I had to worry about perpetual check or getting checkmated, because look how much material I'm up. I'm up an entire two knights. I have 2 extra pawns, and yeah, should be doing pretty well. So my opponent went queen to d6, busy once again threatening to do this. So I went queen to f6. Yeah, I thought for a little bit, I was like, should I go rook to f6 to attack the queen? Maybe that would have been a little bit better, but my thought, once again, I was like trying to limit the chances of me making a mistake or making a blunder. Because I mean, I could have also gone knight to c8 to defend the knight over here. But I was just like, I don't want to allow for any checks. And I don't want to allow for, if I go over here, my rook's now undefended. It's very, very possible in time trouble that I'm going to just miss my rook being attacked and suddenly everything goes in my opponent's favor. So queen to f6, I thought the rooks are still defended. I'm offering the queen trade again. Everything should be fine. My opponent then went back to c5. I went rook to c8 just to defend this pawn. So now I can safely move the knight without worrying about blundering this pawn. And queen to e3, so now I move my knight away from being attacked. I'm 2 entire knights up. Queen takes a7. Lost the pawn, but it's no problem at all. I decided to go across here thinking past pawns exist to be pushed. I'm not too worried about this pawn as well because I have still the 2 rooks. I'm 2 knights up, so I can just sacrifice one of my knights for this pawn if necessary. And I thought just rook to d8. I'm defending the knight. When I move the knight out the way, I can push this pawn. We should be fine. Queen to e3 was what my opponent played next. And I remember after one of these moves, I glanced across at the clock. And I saw that I'd gotten down to 10 seconds, or I was 15 seconds after making my move. So I realized over here that the notation was slowing me down too much, and I needed to actually focus on the game and make sure that I didn't write down the move taking maybe 4 of my 10-second increment and then think for 10 seconds, and then suddenly I'm losing 5 seconds of my 15 seconds on the clock. So I stopped notating over here. What generally happened after this, we did a little bit more maneuvering with the knights. Pawns were pushed. I then took it, so I managed to get this pawn for free, and there was a little bit of a counter attack that happened at some stage. I moved my knight away and the rook went across to g1. The queen was trying to swing in as well. I think it went something like this, but I can't be entirely sure. I did try after the game to write down as many moves as I remembered, but I did get a little bit confused when I was doing that. But overall, the result was that I managed to win the game. I managed to, I think, win. Or I think what happened was at some stage the rooks were doubled over here. I managed to promote. They did the tactic of rook g8, so I had to take, and then they were able to take the queen that I just promoted into. But then I was still so much material down, and my opponent just didn't have enough time to think his way out of it. By that stage, we had both stopped notating. There was a little bit of drama as well. My opponent didn't realize that if there was increment, but it was less than a certain amount of increment, you didn't have to notate. So when I thought it was strange earlier that he was notating, it was strange. It wasn't that he was doing it because he wanted to review the game afterwards or anything like that. And at some stage, he actually queried when I had stopped notating and he was still notating a bit. And he was like, you still need to notate. And I was like, no, I don't. Like, it's less time. He's like, no, but there's increment. So that was a little bit of a drama as well. The arbiter wasn't in the room, so I had to like run across to the other hall because we were playing in a separate venue. So I had to run across to find the arbiter and just be like, this is the case, right? And he came across, and then a couple of moves later, my opponent did end up resigning. But yeah, so all in all, a little bit of drama at the chessboard. A crazy game in terms of the way that it went from something that was quite frustrating and I didn't really know what I was doing to managing to beat a higher rated opponent, someone who, as I say, has a better record against me than I have against them, and doing it fairly convincingly with some nice tactics. I was very happy over here with the g5 because I wasn't really. It's not a move that I would usually consider because it's abandoning your king safety. So once again, I was really happy with my play. I was like, this tournament, it's going so much better than I expected. I've now beaten the second seed. I won 2 games so far. I'm still awake. And so I was really glad that I had decided to play the tournament and really happy with this win overall. And was still going about it with the mindset, if I lose the game or if the next games don't go so well, I've played chess, which is a win. I've played some good games. These first 2 games were great. And I'm here to learn and just get back into practice. No expectations. And hopefully I won't even lose any rating points. So that was the round 2. I will link round 1 if you missed that. It should be over here or over here in the playlist, one of those 2. And once I've released the round 3 video, I will also put that over here as well. In the meantime, there'll just be a placeholder. But thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in the recap of round 3.